Aging and poorly maintained systems are putting growing pressure on our economy. We've seen it wreak havoc on service delivery. We are facing a massive infrastructure backlog. It limits economic growth. It also has an impact on job creation. If you think about the water sector alone, an estimated 400 billion rand is needed to just repair and upgrade failing systems there. Let's look at some of the biggest factors driving the backlog and talk about what could be done urgently to resolve this. Professor Richard Wells from the Department of Civil Engineering of Stellenbosch University joins me now. Prof. Wells, good morning to you and welcome to the program. I mean, I mentioned just a few stats there, and I imagine that as you look across South Africa's landscape and infrastructure particularly, I'd be interested to know what concerns you most about the parts of our country infrastructure-wise that are breaking.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers. Thanks for having us. Now, firstly, infrastructure, yes, very critical, also very expensive, but none of the things happening now are a surprise. Many organizations have been doing excellent work for many years, flagging concerns and developing guidelines and producing recommendations. For instance, the South African Institute of Civil Engineers has an entire infrastructure report card that comes out every few years, highlighting areas which need work. And within that, it'll flag, where are we doing well? There's some areas that we're actually achieving quite nicely on national roads, airports, heavy haul lines, etc. There are other areas, as you point out now, water is becoming a major crisis, both from a supply perspective, but then also locally maintenance of municipal infrastructure. And there's a range of items because there's just so many different types of infrastructure, be it power, be it water, sewerage, roads, all these sorts of things, and they're also managed by different entities. Some entities and some municipalities are doing well. Some things are crumbling to pieces, having a massive impact on service delivery and quality of life of our people.
I want to go to the contrast between the areas you say seem to be doing well, and this is national roads and airports. You just talked about water infrastructure, and we know the awful statistic of how much water we lose just through leaks in our infrastructure. Why do we get it right in certain areas and not? I mean, I'm assuming that managing, water, a networked water infrastructure or water infrastructure network might be a bit more complicated than, say, managing roads. What do you think?
There can be a whole range of factors that influence it. So one of the things you see, though, is when you see these problems, those are symptoms. And often we want to rush in and fix the symptoms quickly. But to get rid of the symptoms, we need to deal with the underlying problems. So it'll range from municipality to municipality or national department to national department. Sometimes there has been corruption. It's been identified in many cases. Sometimes there's the lack of expertise in various departments. Sometimes the lack of resources. Sometimes then there has been, the wrong contractors being awarded things. I think there's also a lot of red tape. Now, when we're building and producing infrastructure, there's a lot of red tape our engineers and contractors have to go through. So often it becomes more about ticking all the right boxes than necessarily providing infrastructure. So then when the focus isn't service delivery rather than ticking various political boxes, it becomes a challenge. Engineering capacity has been severely curtailed in the country. We've lost a lot of engineers to overseas, Canada, Australia, etc. And that's often the backbone, along with our contractors and then the capacity within departments. I mean, people like Alison Lawless have done a fantastic job mapping out the change in technical competency within our municipalities and the qualifications. And you'll see over many years, there's been a significant loss in our professionally registered engineers, our PR engineers. And so that's a big problem when we're losing senior experienced people who manage the projects and roll them out. So that's one of many aspects that needs to be focused on.
Well, against that backdrop that you just painted now, which again, there's so many factors in there, government is looking to unlock 160 billion rand in private investment with support from the World Bank, and they're doing this through credit guarantees and things like blended finance. But the question is, can the private sector realistically close the infrastructure gap, or do we need these deeper policy reforms that have led, or the ignorance of which have led to the systemic infrastructure problems we are seeing now?
Both. Firstly, there has been historically a lot of good capacity. Unfortunately, some of it has been lost, and once again, due to various policies. So I think we do need to make it simpler for contractors to operate and less hurdles in terms of making sure the right people get the right jobs. Yes, if our private sector, our big contractors, engineering companies, and then through to the smaller consultancies as well, they can certainly close it when the money gets there. But if there are cash flow problems where a contractor has to wait a year or two to get paid, they end up closing down, and then the project is half finished and then costs 3 times as much. Or if it's, there's a bit of nepotism going around, then it doesn't get done. So unfortunately, there's a variety of controls, and we must, as I said, we must be careful of quick fixes, but we can certainly do a lot. And there are organizations such as SAICI, such as various other engineering bodies, contractors bodies that are ready to step in and provide assistance to government if they're willing to work hand in hand. Some government entities, great job, well done. Others, there's significant challenges there and a lack of willingness to engage.
I mean, why do you think government would just not want to use the talent, the expertise, and the knowledge that is readily available? As you say, these are people with deep knowledge. Just partner, collaborate.
It's difficult to know, and as I said, there's a history of things, so I can't say on an individual basis. But as I said, there has been successes, but I mean, when we look at certain crumbling infrastructure, it's obvious that there are failures happening there. And we'd have to then dig deeper to find at that municipal, provincial, or national level, why is such and such department failing? Many times there's been an exodus of talents and skills from organizations, leading to a lack of ability to implement projects successfully.
Let's talk about the banking sector. Okay, so we've managed to unlock this money, this 160 we're talking about, and we've just talked about it now. But we do have a very large and well-capitalized banking sector in the country, but it seems as if they've been reluctant to finance infrastructure. And I know that there are some rules related to international best practice, for example, Basel III. But how do we connect all of this? As you say as well, the situation is quite urgent in terms of South Africa's needs when you think about water particularly. How do we get them to come and play as well?
Firstly, risk. I mean, our banks are not stupid. They rightly so want to invest in projects and get a return on it. And when there's been historical issues of projects not achieving completion, not making money, then they're going to be hesitant. So it needs to be simple and obvious for them what their benefit is for them to get involved. Otherwise, they're not going to want to put in these, telephone numbers, billions and billions of rands into infrastructure. It needs to be attractive, and we need to, in many cases, let the private sector guide with clear demarcations and provisions. As I said, in some cases, we've seen the Gautrain do well, our national roads do well, when there's been a well-defined model in place, whereas other municipal infrastructure, not so much. But then why would a big bank want to invest in the sewage facilities of a municipality? Well, we'd have to show what is their return on investment, and they'd need to have a lot of guarantees to make sure it's safe. Otherwise, they're simply not going to put their money in place. And if there's too many red flags and challenges and obstacles, then they're not going to be willing to come to the party.
I'm so sad to leave it on that note, but we're out of time, and I wish we could talk about this more, because infrastructure, as we said in the introduction there, holds the promise for job creation. It holds the promise for, for our GDP growth, but also just holds a promise for us living better lives and having the services that we need. So hopefully we can do this again. But thank you for your time and for your perspective. We really do appreciate it. Professor Richard Walls, who is from Stellenbosch University.